Really dislike Jake Paul. Now, I don't dislike him. I understand him. I want to make something clear. I would still kick the living fuck out of Jake.
Andrew Tate just destroyed Jake Paul on live TV in the most humiliating way possible. Jake Paul never fails to exceed the lowest expectations. First, he backed out of Andrew Tate's $3 million fight offer, then dragged Mike Tyson into a scripted fight. Jake knew Tyson wasn't in his prime, but still exploited the legend for views and a paycheck. It's clear Jake will go to any length for attention and money, no matter how disgraceful.
Because he's allowed himself to become the biggest clown on the internet, and now he's famous, right? Because he's an idiot. But he has a bunch of money, so he gets to...
Now Jake Paul is trying to provoke Andrew Tate into a fight, fully aware he'll never step in the ring himself. Why? Because Jake knows he'd lose and is counting on Tate rejecting the offer to spin the narrative and feed his ego. But Tate isn't falling for it. Instead, he publicly tore Jake apart, exposing every ounce of his fraudulence on live television.
You only want to lose to them so you can say, well, I lost to Conor McGregor. Why don't you lose to an old man who's retired? I live in the real f***ing world, Jake. There's a whole bunch of fighters out here who live in the real f***ing world. Men who are dangerous and dedicated.
Andrew Tate flipped the script by calling Jake's bluff and accepting the fight. What did Jake do? He vanished completely, ghosting the challenge without a word.
but I would whoop his ass. But he wouldn't take a fight against me, because when he loses, I'm not nearly on his level of fame, right? So like, he lost to who? Whereas if he loses to Conor McGregor, it's no big deal. Well, he lost to Conor McGregor, who cares, right? That's what it's about.
Jake's whole strategy relied on Tate refusing the fight so he could spin a narrative of being the fearless warrior no one dares to face. But now that Andrew's ready to go, Jake's in full panic mode. He didn't see this coming and is trapped with no way out. The so-called fearless Jake Paul has gone completely silent, once again proving he's all talk and no action.
I'm not some washed-up UFC fighter. I'm not smaller than him. I would beat the living shit out of him. And if he wants to fight, I'll fight him any day of the week, and I'll fucking wreck him. And
Tate didn't just challenge Jake to a fight. He delivered a brutal reality check that felt like it came with a medical disclaimer. He straight up called Jake's career a joke and accused him of turning boxing into a TikTok-friendly embarrassment. It's hard to argue with that when Jake's idea of competition includes a 58-year-old Mike Tyson. Speaking of Tyson, let's talk about Jake dragging this absolute legend into his nonsense. Mike Tyson, the heavyweight icon, reduced to a content gimmick because Jake wanted to play tough. Andrew Tate summed it up perfectly. This wasn't boxing, it was elder abuse. Jake didn't see Tyson as a revered figure who changed the sport. No, he saw a shortcut, a way to grab headlines without actually risking anything. And the worst part? He thought people wouldn't notice.
However, I do understand what he's doing. I understand that he is very, very smart, even with his marketing angle. I'm just a YouTuber. You're not just a YouTuber. You're a full-grown man with the best coaches in the world who's dedicated his life to learning how to box for years. You know how to box. You're not a complete amateur. You know how to box very well. 3, 4, 5 years of training combat sports. You can box. The guy's not a jackass.
Jake's greatest masterpiece is his laughable fight history, which is like opening a box of fireworks only to find sparklers. He's fought retired MMA fighters who weren't even known for striking. Ben Askren, a wrestler with the speed of a snail. Tyron Woodley, a shadow of his former self. Nate Robinson, a basketball player who looked like he'd never thrown a punch. Jake's career is a highlight reel of low-risk, high-reward stunts designed to fool casual fans into thinking he's the next big thing. Andrew Tate tore through that facade like wet paper towel, telling Jake if you trained half as much as you cherry-pick opponents, maybe you'd actually earn some respect.
He is not just a YouTuber. He is a young man training with Canelo and Ryan Garcia.
When I made the video, I really disliked Jake Paul. Now, I don't dislike him, I understand.
And then there's the $3 million challenge. This wasn't a gimmick or some stage spectacle. It was a real offer. Winner takes all, no excuses. Tate didn't care about the money. He wanted to expose Jake for what he truly is. And what did Jake do? He ran, not walked, not jogged, ran. Because here's the thing, Jake Paul thrives in controlled environments. His fights are choreographed to protect his ego and keep his narrative intact. He's the king of playing it safe while pretending he's risking it all. But a fight with Andrew Tate, that's not part of the script. That's a gamble he can't afford because it threatens to blow up his entire brand.
$3 million. You put three, I put three. Winner takes all. You know my name, Andrew Tate. I will fight you any day, anytime. Let's fucking go.
If I were to fight Jake Paul, I would take it completely seriously like a real fight, and I'd whoop his ass. I'd beat him. Jake. Everyone thinks he's just so...
Jake's rejection of Andrew Tate's $3 million challenge wasn't just a strategic dodge. It was a confession. It revealed the truth behind his endless bravado and trash talk. It's all just talk. Jake, who loves calling himself a disruptor and game changer, went completely silent when faced with a legitimate threat. His defeat to Tommy Fury was already the beginning of his downfall, and fighting Tate would have been the final nail in the coffin. Jake knew it, and that's why he ran from the challenge. But here's the thing, even without stepping into the ring, Andrew Tate's public takedown of Jake Paul was enough to cause real damage. It wasn't just a roast, it was a full-on humiliation, a masterclass in exposing a fraud. Sure, Jake's TikTok followers and YouTube fans may still buy into his act, but the rest of the world can now see through it. Tate reminded everyone what boxing is really about: respect, skill, and authenticity. Jake Paul, he's just a loudmouth who got lucky riding the algorithm. Tate's psychological warfare against Jake was a thing of beauty. Tate didn't just call Jake a clown, he dismantled his entire existence like a surgeon with a scalpel. He accused Jake of being nothing more than a kid playing dress-up in a sport he doesn't even respect. And let's be honest, Jake's whole career has been less about boxing and more about racking up TikTok likes. Tate's savage line, "Jake, your legacy isn't built on fights, it's built on TikTok captions," was so precise that Jake probably needed an ice pack for his ego. This wasn't just trash talk, it was psychological destruction. Jake's paper-thin self-image began to crack right before our eyes. Jake Paul thrives on projecting a larger-than-life confidence, but Tate's relentless verbal uppercuts shattered that illusion, leaving nothing but a crumbling facade. Social media exploded with memes and jokes that hit harder than any punch Jake has ever thrown. Platforms like Twitter and Instagram were plastered with hashtags like Jake Paul exposed and Tate vs Jake, with fans gleefully roasting Jake for dodging Tate's $3 million winner-takes-all challenge. The irony was hard to ignore. Jake, the self-proclaimed fearless fighter, was running faster than his hype train. His carefully crafted persona as a fearless disruptor in the boxing world suddenly looked as stable as one of his cringy post-fight celebrations. Let's not pretend this was just another day online. The backlash was brutal. Fans, haters, and everyone in between jumped in on the pile-on. Jake, who supposedly earned over $40 million from his boxing career, found himself in a position no amount of money could fix. Memes labeled him as a fraud, a runner, and, let's be honest, just plain scared. Even his most loyal fans began second-guessing their allegiance. Andrew Tate hit the nail on the head when he said, "Jake, even your fans know you cherry-pick fights to protect your brand." And the worst part? He was absolutely right. Jake's avoidance of Tate wasn't just a strategic move. It was a neon sign screaming fear. Jake's reputation as a fighter, one who's willing to step up and face any challenge, disappeared the moment he refused the challenge. His refusal exposed the biggest truth of all. Jake Paul's career is built on carefully curated, low-risk fights that protect his brand and ego.
Two brothers, one cage. Jake Logan, you Tristan. Who comes out alive?
You know what? I'm trying so hard to not start internet beefs. I'm really trying not to.
You could say Jake and Logan, man.
Bro,
don't worry about it.
No, I can't lie. Bro, I'm going through life. I'm trying to live peaceful now. I've got Fed agents in my house. Matrix is out.
For Jake, rejecting Andrew Tate's challenge was a PR disaster. His entire brand is built on the idea that he's fearless and willing to fight anyone, but dodging Tate's challenge blew a massive hole in that narrative. This wasn't just about avoiding one fight. It was about what that rejection represented. A fight with Tate wasn't just a risky move. It was a direct threat to the illusion Jake has spent years carefully crafting. Let's not forget his loss to Tommy Fury, which already exposed cracks in his armor. Stepping into the ring with Tate would have been the final blow, and Jake knew it. Andrew Tate's mic drop moment was the perfect cherry on top of this roast. Jake, you don't need boxing gloves. You need to stay on YouTube, where losing isn't as painful. Brutal, accurate, and cutting, it could have doubled as a knife. Jake's rejection wasn't just about avoiding a fight. It was an unspoken confession. Deep down, Jake knows he's out of his league. Tate didn't need to prove anything. His legacy is already solid. But Jake, he needed this fight to keep the illusion alive, and now that illusion is shattered. The fallout from this debacle is something Jake might never recover from. His road to redemption isn't just uphill, it's practically vertical. It's no longer enough to just hype his next fight. He'll have to convince a skeptical audience that he's more than a YouTuber with boxing gloves. And let's be real, that's a tall order when even his diehard fans are starting to question his credibility.